Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Mursaleen. Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa ashabihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. I bear witness that no one deserves to be worshipped except Allah Ta'ala, the one who has no partner and no similar, the one who has no length and no width and no depth and no perimeter, the one who is not a volume and is not in a place. And how could he be in a place when he existed before time and space? He created everything except himself, including you and your actions. Nothing occurs except by his will, both good and bad, he destined to happen. He speaks without sound, letter, or language, not Arabic, Hebrew, nor Korean. He's not light, he's not a spirit, he has nothing in common with human beings. He's not in the direction of up, down, right, left, front, nor back. And whatever you imagine in your mind, Allah is different than that. And I bear witness that our noble, unrivaled master, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is the slave of Allah, his final messenger, and the best of all of God's creations. May Allah unite us with him in paradise and grant us a drink from his basin. And may Allah increase us in patience, humility, knowledge, and comprehension, and help us to put our knowledge into practice and grant us all sincere intentions. Ameen. We're continuing in the book, The Straight Path, As-Siratul Mustaqim, written by the great scholar of our times, the Allama Abdullah al-Harari. May Allah have mercy on him. Ameen. In the text, we have arrived at page 209. We've arrived at page what? 209. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh to those who salamed me. This class today is a very special class, mashallah, in a book that's very full of benefits, full of amazing knowledge, full of outstanding teachings. This one stands out. It's a little bit different than the other chapters. Okay, this is something that, sometimes when people get to this portion of the book, they invite children and things to come and listen to the lesson when we get to this portion of the book. Okay, the class today is a little bit different than the classes that we've been taking up until now. What we're going to read today is a story, a historical event of something that happened, something that's confirmed with witnesses and recorded in the annals of history. It says, we're on what page? 209. It says, as a title to the new chapter, إثبات أن الأسباب العادية لا تؤثر في الحقيقة وإنما المؤثر الحقيقي هو الله. Confirmation that the normal reasons do not affect in reality, and that the only one who affects in reality is Allah. What does this title mean? This title, to really understand the purpose of this chapter, I want to remind everyone about the difference between causes and the effects of the causes. Okay? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created in this world causes, and he created effects of the causes, and he created a relationship between the cause and the effect, such that if the cause happens, normally you can expect the effect to happen afterwards. For example, if I eat bread, that is a cause. The effect of eating the bread is that I will stop being hungry. Okay? There's a cause and there's an effect. Here's another example. If a sick person takes medicine, the taking of medicine is a cause, and the effect is that the sick person will return to health. Here's another example. If a person puts paper into a fire, the paper will burn. Putting the paper in the fire is a cause, and combustion is the effect. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator of the causes, and Allah is the creator of the effects. It is an important part of the Islamic Aqidah that we do not believe that anything other than Allah has the power to create. So what that means is that causes do not create their effects. Rather, the cause is created by Allah. The effect is also created by Allah. And if Allah willed, the cause and the effect would be separated, such that the cause might happen and the effect would not happen. This is what happened when our master Ibrahim alayhi salam was thrown into the fire, and he was not burned, nor were his clothes burned. That's an example of the cause happening, but the effect not happening, because Allah did not create the effect. It's also possible that the effects might happen without the cause. Like, for example, a person might feel full. His hunger might go away even though he did not eat. Okay, so causes and effects are separate things. Okay, they're separate from one another. And Allah is the one who creates the causes. Allah is the one who creates the effects. Okay, this is like directly related to what we've been talking about in the last several classes, which is the subject of destiny. Okay, when we talk about destiny, what we're saying is that everything that happens was willed by Allah in eternity. And everything that happens was created by Allah with his eternal power. And everything that happens was known by Allah in eternity that it would happen. Okay? So what that means then is that the causes were created by Allah and the effects were also created by Allah, because everything that happens is created by whom? By Allah. What we're going to read today in this story is an example, a historical example of something that really happened over 1,000 years ago. And this real life story is a proof, because it's confirmed to be true. This real life story is a proof that causes do not create their effects, but rather Allah is the one who creates the effects. Let's read the story, insha'Allah ta'ala. It says, Al-Hakim, the author of Al-Mustadrak. Okay, so when we're talking about the great scholars of Islam, Al-Hakim is one of the giants. In the area of hadith, he was a hafiz. Okay, he wrote a book called Al-Mustadrak. In this book, he listed hadith that meet all of the criteria to be in Sahih al-Bukhari or in Sahih Muslim, but they were not in al-Bukhari or in Muslim. So it's like him saying, it's like a book that has like a lot of Sahih hadith in it. Unfortunately, he died before he finished reviewing it. So, some of the hadith in the book, he certainly would have removed if he had lived. But this man is one of the very big scholars of hadith. He was the Shaykh of Imam Al-Bayhaqi. MashaAllah. Just to give you an idea of who this man is, Al-Hakim, the author of Al-Mustadrak. He mentioned in a book he wrote called Tariq Naysabur. So he authored a book of history of the area of Naysabur. What did he say? He said, I heard Zakaria, Yahya ibn Muhammad al-Ambari, saying, I heard Abu al-Abbas, Isa ibn Muhammad ibn Isa al-Tahmani al-Marwazi saying. So he's relating his chain. Okay, he's saying he heard Zakaria say that he heard Abu al-Abbas say. Okay, and this thing that we're about to read, this is what Abu al-Abbas, Isa ibn Muhammad said. He said, certainly, Allah, the exalted and glorified, makes apparent in his creations whatever he willed, if he willed, of signs and lessons. What does he mean by that? He's saying that if Allah wills, then Allah can reveal, can bring into existence signs that support the Aqidah of Islam. Signs that Allah may at times create in the world, a sign that is like a proof to everyone that Islam is true. He said, then by those signs, Islam would be increased in honor and power. And it, meaning the sign or the lesson, supports what was revealed of guidance and evidence, and it spreads the signs of prophethood and clarifies the indications of the message, and it strengthens the bonds of Islam. As generosity from him, those signs and lessons would more firmly establish the reality of faith for his walis. It gives them more evidence and proof against those who refuse to obey Allah and left out his religion. Meaning these signs, they are proofs of the truth of Islam, and they support and give more strength and increase the certainty of those walis, those whom Allah has guaranteed that they will die as Muslims. And these signs are a proof against those who rejected Islam, against the kafirs who do not believe that Islam is the truth. Then whoever was tortured would be tortured with evidence, and whoever was rewarded would be rewarded with evidence. So this is part of the wisdom of Allah bringing forth these signs in the world. Because those who accept the truth when they see it, these people will be rewarded on the day of judgment based on evidence, based on the fact that when they saw the sign, they accepted it. And those who are tortured on the day of judgment will be tortured based on what? Evidence. Because they saw the sign and they rejected it. Therefore, to him is the praise. No one is God but he, the one with the ultimate evidence, the dominating might, and the obvious power. May the salah of Allah be upon our master Muhammad, the prophet of mercy and the messenger of guidance, and upon him and his pure al is the salam and mercy of Allah and his blessings. In my book, it says, and upon his pure al, but in the Arabic, it says, and upon him and his pure al. Okay, the dua is for the salah of Allah to be upon Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and for the salam of Allah to be upon Prophet Muhammad as well as his al, radiyallahu anhu. I'm continuing. Today, I'm not going to do a whole lot of explaining. I'm mostly going to just read the story. I'll point out things that need to be pointed out, mashallah. But this story, it's not a short one. So we'll fill the whole class reading it, inshallah. It says, indeed, among what we have seen with our own eyes, okay, so this man, he's reporting what he saw and heard. He says, indeed, among what we have seen with our own eyes and witnessed in our time and known about it with certainty, and as a result, our sureness about our religion and our faith in what our prophet came with and the truth to which he called was increased, and it encouraged the practice of jihad because of the merit of the martyrs, and it increased our faith in what he conveyed from Allah, the mighty and honored, about the martyrs, which is that he, may his praises be glorified, says in the Quran, وَلَا تَحْسَبَنَّ الَّذِينَ قُتِلُوا فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ أَمْوَاتًا بَلْ أَحْيَاءٌ عِنْدَ رَبِّهِمْ يُرْزَقُونَ فَرِحِينَ. Which means, do not consider those who are killed fighting for the sake of Allah as dead. In fact, they are alive to their Lord, and they are provided for happy. Okay, so what the speaker is going to do now is he's going to recount something he saw, which is a proof that this ayah is true, which is a proof that what was taught by our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is true. What is this story? He says, is that in the year 238, I came to a city of Khawarizm called Hazarasb. west of the valley of Jayhun. And from that city to the largest, there is a distance of half a day. I was informed that there was a woman among the wives of the martyrs there. She saw a dream as if she was fed something in it, and she has not eaten anything or taken a drink since the time of Abu Abbas ibn Tahir, the governor of Khorasan, and he died 8 years before that. May Allah accept his deeds. So this man, this scholar, who's going around, he heard this story that there's a woman in this town who hasn't had anything to eat or drink since the time that the governor of the area was Abu Abbas ibn Tahir, a man who had been already dead for 8 years by the time he heard this story. So this woman has gone at least 8 years without eating or drinking. He said, then I passed by that city in the year 242. Okay. And I saw her. And she told me her story, but I did not research her well because of my youth. Then I returned to Khawarizm at the end of the year 252. This is 10 years later. And I saw her still alive. And I found her story common and widespread. This city is on the route of the caravans, and many of those who settled there, if her story reached them, would love to go look at her. So they would not ask any man, woman, or child, except that they would know her and point them to where she was. So what he's saying here is, at this point, it's been like at least 14 years that this woman hasn't eaten or drinking anything. Okay? And she's become very famous. Everybody who passed through there, they want to go visit her and see her. They want to see this woman who hasn't eaten in many, many, many years. Okay? And she was so famous that everyone knows who she is and knows where she is. So any visitor who might want to see her can just ask anybody, hey, how do I find this person? Her name's Rahma. They say, how do I find this person, Rahma? And anybody would tell them. He continues, so when I reached the area, I sought her and found her outside of the town by many farsakhs, okay, many miles outside of the town. I went, tracking her from village to village, and caught her between two villages, striding strongly. As it happened, she was a middle-aged woman with a good stature. It says here, tight-breasted, and blood was apparent in her. Her cheeks were rosy, and her heart was intelligent, meaning her mind was intelligent. She walked along while I rode. Okay, so this man was riding on an animal. She was walking. He said, I offered her a ride, and she did not take it. And she started walking briskly by my side. Among the people who were traveling with me in the session were some traders and landlords, and among them was a scholar named Muhammad ibn Hamdaway al-Harithi, and Musa ibn Harun al-Bazzar took from him in Mecca, a middle-aged man who was worshipful and narrated hadith. Also, there was a nice young man named Abdullah ibn Abdurrahman. He used to show the people of his area who had grievances how to swear in front of the judge. Okay, so this man, he's traveling with a group of people, and within this group of people are scholars and pious Muslims. He said, I asked them about her. He asked his traveling companions about this woman, Rahma. He said, I asked them about her, and they praised her greatly and said good things about her. They said, her situation is clear to us. No one among us differs about her. So what did they say when he asked about them? They said, everybody around here knows who she is. Everyone knows that this is not some kind of tall tale. Everyone knows, like, what you've heard is real. Okay, this woman has not eaten in well over a decade. It says, the one named Abdullah ibn Abdurrahman said, I have been hearing her story since I was young. I was growing up while the people were talking about her story all the time. I dedicated attention to her and busied myself with researching her. And I did not see except that she was a good, chaste woman. And I did not discover any lie in her claim or any trickery or deception. He mentioned that in the past, some of the people who worked for the governors around Khwarizm used to summon her, and they would put her in a house for a month, 2 months, or more, and lock her in. They would appoint someone to observe her, and they would not see her eating or drinking, nor find any trace of urine or feces. Then they would treat her nicely, give her clothing, and let her go. When the people of the area had all agreed to her truthfulness, I asked her about her story, name, and situation in detail. So this man, Abdullah bin Abdurrahman, he said he had been hearing about her since he was young, so he decided to investigate and confirm that these stories were true. And it wasn't only him. The ruler of the area would sometimes imprison her, keep her locked up for months, just to see, is she actually eating or drinking or not? And they would all find that this woman is not eating, she's not drinking, and she doesn't go to the bathroom. Okay, so it got to the point where everyone in the area knows that this is true. And so once it became clear that everything they heard about this woman was true, he decided to go ask her directly to tell her story. What's her story? He said, she mentioned that her name was Rahma bint Ibrahim, and that she had a husband who was a poor carpenter. His livelihood was by the work of his hands, and his provision came to him day by day. Okay, you know what that means. Like, he's a man, he didn't have much money. Each day he would try to make just enough money to feed his family for that day. What he earned was never more than what he needed for feeding his family. She had given birth to a number of children for him. She said, Al-Aqta, the king of the Turks, came to town. Now, way back in these days, this is in the 200s after the Hijrah. At that time, the Turks were not yet Muslims. Okay, the Turks at that time, they were Kafirs, and they were strong in battle. And the Muslims the Muslims conquered a lot of territory very quickly in the time of the Sahaba. But at this point, it's 200 years later, and they haven't been able to expand past this area because the Turks were very strong, and the Turks were enemies of Islam at the time. So she said, Al-Aqta, the king of the Turks, came to town. When the river froze, he crossed the valley and came over to us with 3,000 horsemen. So there's this area in Central Asia, Khawarizm. It's known to have some very large rivers there. In English, one of them is called the Oxus River, and the other one is called the Jayhun. These are very huge rivers. Okay, but because it's so cold there in the winter, even these huge rivers will sometimes freeze. So people will be able to cross from one side of the river over to the other. She said this man was king of the Turks. During a winter when the river was frozen, he crossed over and came to their town with 3,000 horsemen. The people of Khawarizm called him Kasra. Ibn Abbas said that this Al-Aqta was an extremely unjust disbeliever with strong enmity toward the Muslims. Towards the Muslims. He had been troublesome to the people on the borders and insisted on capturing people of Khawarizm and killing and raiding them. The governors of Khorasan used to appease him and his likes among the leaders of the non-Arab blasphemers so that they stopped their raids on the citizens and to protect the blood of the Muslims. They would send each one of them money, lots of trinkets, and different types of fine clothing. So these Turks, they would raid the Muslims on a regular basis in order to demand money. And the rulers of Khorasan, who were the ultimate rulers of this area, they used to pay to stop the raids. It says, one year, this blasphemer was disrespectful to the ruler, and I do not know why that was. Were the gifts late? Did he consider that what was sent to him was inferior to what was sent to the other kings? He came with his army and blocked the roads. He killed and maimed and committed corruptions and atrocities. The horsemen of Khawarizm were unable to defeat him. The news of his attack reached Abu Abbas, Abdullah bin Tahir. May Allah have mercy upon him. So he dispatched to him 4 commanders, Tahir ibn Ibrahim ibn Mudrik, Yaqub ibn Mansur ibn Talha, Mikal Mawla Tahir, and Harun al-Arid. He loaded the town with soldiers and weapons and arranged them into 4 segments of the region. Each took a quarter. They protected the women by the will of Allah. So the governor sent the army to protect the town against these Turks. He continues, furthermore, the valley of Jehun at the highest point of the river of Belch froze over when the cold intensified. It is a great valley, very treacherous and destructive to the crops. When the river expands, its width would be about a farsakh. Okay, a farsakh is 3 Islamic miles, which is probably about 5 of our miles. Okay, so this river is 5 miles wide. He says, when the river expands, its width would be about a farsakh, and if it would freeze, it would become a level surface, and nothing beneath it can be reached unless a hole is dug into it, like digging wells out of boulders. I have seen the thickness of the ice 10 handspans, and I was informed that in the past it would exceed 20 handspans. So this river, when it would freeze over, a handspan is this, okay, the distance from the tip of your thumb to the tip of your pinky. Okay, it's about, I don't know, maybe, I don't know what that is, 8 or 9 inches. Okay, so 20 handspans is like 15 feet. Okay, this river would freeze very deep and become solid, like very solid ice, capable of supporting an entire army crossing over it. He said, when it would freeze, it would serve as a bridge for the people of the area. The soldiers, the pack animals, and the caravans would pass over it. And so what is between the two banks would become arranged. Sometimes it would remain frozen for 120 days. If in a year the cold would be less, it would remain for 70 days to about 3 months. Okay, so this river, pretty much every winter, it would freeze over. Sometimes it would stay frozen for 4 months, sometimes for 3 months, sometimes a little less than 3 months. The woman said, so the blasphemer crossed over with his horsemen to the door of the fortress. The people sought refuge in the fortress and kept their belongings with them. They attacked the Muslims in the morning and harmed them, so the people of the area were detained inside. They wanted to go out, but the magistrate prevented them until the soldiers of the Sultan and the volunteer fighters arrived. In the meantime, some young men strapped up and went close to the wall of the fortress with whatever weapons they could carry. They attacked the blasphemers, so the blasphemers faked a retreat and pulled them away from between the buildings and walls. Once they got outside, the blasphemers returned to them, and the Muslims wound up in something like the forest. They sought cover behind a structure where they battled. They were separated from the fortress, and help was far from them. They battled severely. They stayed firm until their bowstrings popped and their bows snapped. Tiredness reached them, and they were touched by hunger and thirst. Most of them were killed, and the rest were inflicted with severe injuries. When the night came, both factions fell back. So the blasphemers killed many of the Muslims, and most of the ones who weren't killed were severely injured. But when nighttime came, the fighting stopped. The woman said, the fires were lit on the mountaintops the hour the blasphemer crossed over. The signal reached Jurjaniya, which is a large city on the outskirts of Khawarizm, where Mikhail Mawla Tahir was with an army. So he rushed to respond out of reverence for the Emir, Abul Abbas, Abdullah ibn Tahir. May Allah have mercy upon him. He ran to Hazarasb in a day and a night, 40 Khawarizmi farsakhs, and those were much bigger than the Khurasani farsakhs. So when the blasphemers attacked the city, they lit the fires so that the signal would be made, there'd be a signal that the city was in danger and that the army needed to come and defend them. The signal reached the army, but the army was very far away. Okay? But the army rushed to get to the town. They traveled for 1 day and 1 night to get there. It says, the Turks decided to wipe out the band the next day. Okay, so the next day, the Turks decided they're just going to kill all that remained of these people that were fighting against them. It says, when that was in progress, the black flag showed up, and they heard the sounds of the drums. So they retreated from the people, and Mikhail reached the battlefield. He buried the dead and carried the wounded. Okay, so when the reinforcements arrived from the Muslims, the Turks retreated. The woman said, that evening, we had 400 funerals in the fortress. There was no house except that there was a dead person carried to it. It was a widespread tragedy, and the whole region shook with crying. She said, my husband was placed in front of me, killed. So I was overcome with extreme sadness and crying, as a young woman would cry over her husband, the father of her children, and we had dependents. She's worried. Even when her husband was alive, they barely had money. Now she's wondering, how is she going to feed herself and her children? She said, the women of my family and neighbors gathered to help me through the crying. The children came, and they were babies. They had no idea of what was going on. They asked for bread, and I did not have any. So my chest tightened by my situation. Then I heard the adhan of Maghrib. So I rushed to the prayer. I prayed what my Lord ordained for me. Then I prostrated, supplicating. I was beseeching Allah, the Exalted, asking him for patience and for him to mend the situation of my orphaned children. Then sleep took me away in my prostration. Okay, while she was in salat, while she was in sujood, making dua to Allah, she fell asleep in the salat. She said, I saw myself in my dream as if I am in a beautiful land full of stones. I am seeking my husband. A man called me. Where are you going, O free woman? I said, I am seeking my husband. He said, take the right. She said, so I took the right and came upon a level land, fragrant and abundant with greenery. And lo and behold, there were palaces and buildings that I am unable to describe, and the likes of which I've never seen. And there were rivers flowing on the face of the earth without being in trenches. They had no banks. I ended up reaching people sitting in different circles. They were wearing green clothing, and they were engulfed in light. And wouldn't you know, they were the people who were killed in the battle, eating from spreads laid out before them. I started going between them and examining their faces, seeking my husband so that he can see me. He called to me, O Rahma. So I followed the voice, and lo and behold, he was in the same situation in which I saw the other martyrs. His face was like the full moon. He was eating with companions of his who were killed with him that day. He said to his companions, this poor thing has been hungry all day. Do you permit me to give her something to eat? They permitted him. So he gave me a piece of bread. She said, I knew at that time that it was bread, but I do not know how it was made. It was whiter than snow and milk, sweeter than honey and sugar, and softer than butter and fat. I ate it. And when it settled in my belly, he said, go. Allah has given you sufficient food and drink for the rest of your life in the dunya. She said, I woke from my sleep satiated and quenched. She was hungry when she made the salat, and when she woke up, she wasn't hungry anymore and she wasn't thirsty anymore. She said, I needed neither food nor drink, and I have not tasted them since then until this day of mine, nor anything the people eat. So from that day, she hasn't eaten or drinking anything. Abul Abbas said, she used to sit with us. We used to eat, and she would distance herself and take hold of her nose, claiming that she is harmed by the smell of the food. So this woman, it's not merely that she didn't eat or drink anymore. She didn't find the smell of food to be a nice smell. Like she wanted to get away from it. He said, so I asked her, do you seek nutrition from anything or drink anything other than water? She said, no. I asked her if gas and waste come out of her like other people. She said, I have not experienced waste since that time. I said, and menstruation? I think that she said it stopped when the eating stopped. I said, do you have the women's need for men? She said, and you are not shy of me to ask me the likes of this? I said, it is so I could tell the people about you, and it is necessary that I would be thorough. She said, I do not need it. I said, do you sleep? She said, yes, the sweetest of sleep. I said, what do you see in your dreams? She said, like you see. I said, do you experience weakness because of the lack of food? She said, I have not felt hunger since I was fed that food. She used to accept charity. I said to her, what do you do with it? She said, I clothe myself and my children. I said to her, do you feel the cold? And are you harmed by heat? She said, yes. I said, do you become tired when you walk? She said, yes. Am I not human? I said, do you make wudu for salah? She said, yes. I said, why? She said, the scholars ordered me with that. Okay, they were asking her, why do you make wudu for your salats? If you never pee and you never poop, like if gas never comes out, what do you need to make salat for? What do you need to make wudu for? She said the scholars of her time commanded her to continue making wudu. So that's what she does. I say, they have given her this fatwa from the hadith, there is no wudu except for impurity or sleep. So this man, he figured that the reason why she was given that fatwa is because she still sleeps. And this is why she still makes wudu. It says, she mentioned to me that her stomach is stuck to her back. So I ordered a woman who was with us, and she looked, that is, without looking at her awrah, and indeed her stomach was as she described. Like having not eaten in so long, like the front of her stomach was like pressed up against her back. And that's how thin she had become. It said she had taken a bag, stuffed it with cotton, and tied it to her stomach so that her back would not snap when she walked. I never ceased to visit Hazarasp every 2 or 3 years, and she would meet with me and I would repeat the questions. She would not add anything or omit anything. I presented her story to Abdullah ibn Abdurrahman, the jurist. He said, I have heard this talk since I was raised, and I have never found anyone who denies it or claims that he heard that she eats or drinks or defecates. This story proves that there is no necessary intellectual relation between the lack of food and sickness, the loss of health, and degeneration of the body. Okay, this is like the end of the story here. And the author, Shaykh Abdullah, may Allah have mercy on him, he's saying after concluding, after telling the story of something that really happened, he's saying this story is proof that it is not necessarily true that if a person stops eating that they will become sick or get weak or that their body will degenerate. Okay, that's because the causes are not the creators of the effects. Okay, eating food is not what creates health in our bodies. Eating food is not what creates strength for our bodies. Eating food is a cause, and the normal effect of it is that our body will receive nutrition and be strong. But if Allah wills, Allah is able to create those effects in us without the cause. This story is a proof that it's not the food that sustains the person, rather it's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that sustains the person. He says, likewise, it is mentally valid that the rest of the normal reasons would be devoid of their results. He says, so just like the story proves that, normally not eating would be a cause of sickness, but in this case, not eating did not lead to sickness. The cause did not lead to its effect. Once we established rationally that a cause might happen without its effect, well, then rationally we would conclude that any cause might occur without having its effect. So we conclude, therefore, that cause and effect don't have a necessary relationship. And if they don't have a necessary relationship, then we must conclude, therefore, that the causes are not the ones that create the effects. All right, this story serves as a proof that Allah is the only creator, that all of the effects are created by Him and Him alone. It says, furthermore, it proves that things are by the will of Allah, the Exalted, and that the martyrs have a life in the graves. Glory be to the one who has power over everything. MashaAllah. With that, we reach the end of the chapter. And I find this story to be very amazing. Okay, this is not just some kind of story that people tell. Okay, this is a confirmed thing that actually happened over 1,000 years ago. And it proves without a doubt that whatever happens in this world happens by the will of Allah. And it proves without a doubt that if Allah wills a benefit to reach you, then that benefit will reach you. Okay, even if everyone in the world conspired to try to prevent it from reaching you, it will still reach you. And if Allah destined the harm to reach you, then it's going to reach you. Even if the whole world conspired to try to protect you from it, it will still reach you. Okay, the Muslim understands from these kind of stories that the one who is the true benefiter and true harmer of the creations is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah is the one who creates the benefits, and Allah is the one who creates the harm. And no one and no thing other than Allah has the power to benefit us or harm us unless it's by the permission of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When the Muslim understands this, the Muslim will stop seeking the dunya for what he wants. The Muslim who understands this will know to go to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for his needs. Okay, I want us all to understand that it makes no sense whatsoever to resort to sin in order to get the things that we want. If a person is hungry, you don't steal in order to eat. Okay, because stealing, whatever it is that you stole and whatever you're going to get when you sell it or when you eat it, okay, that thing is not what creates nutrition in your body. Allah is the one who creates nutrition in your body. So ask Allah to take away your hunger. You understand? You see the point I'm trying to make here? Okay, when the Muslim understands that the one who is truly in control, the one who truly is the one who creates the benefit for you, when we understand that that one is Allah, then we know not to look elsewhere. And we understand the backwardsness of trying to seek a benefit from Allah through disobeying him. It doesn't make sense. We don't say, oh, I want Allah to benefit me, so let me do this haram thing. That doesn't make sense. No. If you want the benefit from Allah, then the intelligent thing to do is to seek that by means of what? Obedience. By means of obedience. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Brothers and sisters, this thing that we're talking about here, this is something that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Allah in the Quran, tabaraka wa ta'ala, refer to as at-tawakkul ala Allah. These things are referred to as what? Relying on Allah. Okay. We as Muslims, we believe in our hearts that the one who is the true creator of benefit and the true creator of harm is what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. As for the causes, we do not believe that causes create the effects. And as long as we have this belief in our heart, then if we go seek the causes as a means to reach the effect that we want, this is still considered to be relying on Allah. You get it? Just like I know that Allah creates bread and Allah creates my action of eating and Allah creates the feeling of satisfaction after I eat, just like I know all of those things are created by Allah, then I know when I eat, if I eat, hoping to feel satisfaction, hoping for my hunger to go away, I know when I eat that bread, I know it's not the bread that creates the satisfaction in my body. I know that Allah is the one who created this satisfaction. And so when I eat the bread, I'm not relying on the bread. I'm relying on whom? I'm relying on Allah. Okay? If I get a job and I work in order to earn money so that I can buy food and buy clothing and, pay rent or whatever else, this does not mean I'm relying on my employer. This does not mean I'm relying on myself. No, if I believe in my heart that these things that I'm doing are merely causes and that Allah is the creator of the effects, then that means when I do these causes, I'm relying on whom? I'm relying on Allah. This is an important thing for us to understand, and you're going to see in the coming chapters evidence of it. This is something that the Wahhabis do not understand at all. They do not understand this at all. A Wahhabi, if they see you pursuing a cause, even though in your heart you know that the cause does not create the effect, in your heart you know that Allah is the creator, the Wahhabis will often call you a kafir for that. For example, if we want something from Allah, what do? We make dua and we ask him. Am I right? Don't we make dua when we ask Allah for something? Okay. So what if you happen to be in a graveyard at the time that you make dua to Allah? If the Wahhabi sees you making dua in a graveyard, they will be quick to say you're a kafir and a mushrik. They'll be quick to say you're worshiping the grave or some other crazy assertion. Okay, this is not what the Sunnis say. Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah, we say that making dua to Allah is a cause. Okay, and if Allah wills, then He may create whatever it is we're asking for. Making dua is not, we're not worshiping our own words. We're not worshiping the words we're saying. No, we make dua to Allah in the hope that Allah will create for us what we need. Just like the Muslim might make a salat. Don't we sometimes make du'as after a salat? It's well known that right after the 5 obligatory salats, this is a time when du'as are answered. So when we finish the salat, what do? We sit there and we make dua. Because that's a time when du'as are answered. So if we choose to wait for that time to make dua, it does not mean that we're worshiping time. It does not mean that we're worshiping the salat. It means that we've decided to do something which Allah made a cause for us getting what we want. And Allah is the one who creates what we want. This is not worshiping other than Allah. This is recognizing that Allah is the creator and that the only way we're going to get what we want is if He wills for us to get it. Similarly, there are other things, there are other causes that the person might pursue. If a sick person takes medicine, what is he doing? He's pursuing a cause. He does not believe that the medicine creates health in his body. He believes the medicine is merely a cause. Allah is the one who created the cause, and Allah is the one that creates the effect, not the medicine. And just like there are places where du'as are more likely to be accepted, and times when du'as are more likely to be accepted. For example, when you're at the graves of the awliya, these are places where du'as are more likely to be accepted. Or at certain times, like right after one of the 5 obligatory salats, or in the last part of the night, or at the end of Asr time on Fridays. These are times when du'as are more likely to be accepted. Just like certain places and times are causes for du'a to be accepted, there are also certain names that are causes for du'a to be accepted. This is why from the time of the Sahaba until now, it's been very common for Muslims to mention the name of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam when we say our du'as. Why? Because Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam has the highest status of all the creations. He's the most favored creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And simply by mentioning his name when you make dua, that may be a cause for Allah to answer your prayer. This does not mean we're worshiping Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We all know that our Prophet alaihi salatu wasallam is a creation. We know he has a beginning. We know that he died. Okay, we don't have any kind of delusion in thinking that he is God. And we know that anything other than Allah is not worthy of worship. We're not worshiping him. Rather, we are simply recognizing that because of his high status, mentioning his name may be a cause for us to get what we're praying for. The Wahhabi does not understand this. The Wahhabi will say by mentioning the name of Prophet Muhammad, we're worshiping him. And this is not it. The Wahhabi, if you ask him to explain himself, he will say, when you say the Prophet's name, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he'll say, you're praying to Prophet Muhammad. You think Prophet Muhammad is the one who has the power to benefit you and harm you. And we say, no, we don't think Prophet Muhammad has the power to benefit us or harm us, no more than you think that the medicine has power to benefit you or harm you. No, the medicine is a cause, and Allah is the one who creates the benefit. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is a cause, and Allah creates the benefit. Mentioning his name is a cause, and Allah creates the benefit. Similarly, there are items that belong to him. How many of you have ever met someone who has one of Prophet Muhammad's hairs? Sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You know, merely looking at that hair might be a cause for you to get what you're making dua for. Okay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put causes in the world so that we can use them. Okay, and the evidence for this is numerous. There are ayahs in the Quran, وَاسْتَعِينُوا بِالصَّبْرِ وَالصَّلَاةِ. For example, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us to seek help by means of patience and salat. So Allah is telling us that patience and salat are causes. And by means of these causes, we may get what we seek. In the Quran, it also mentions places. Okay, in Surah Ali Imran, it mentions that Prophet Zechariah, alayhi salam, would find every time he went into Lady Maryam's area that food would be there. He didn't bring her any food. Where's this food coming from? And Lady Maryam, alayhi salam, she said that Allah creates that food right there for her. And what did Zechariah, alayhi salam, do? He decided to make his dua right there in the place where Allah is creating food for Lady Maryam. That's the place where he made dua for him to have a son. And of course, he was given a son among the best of sons, Prophet Yahya, alayhi salam. Okay? You think Prophet Zechariah doesn't know the difference between Iman and Kufr? You think Prophet Zechariah was worshiping the room that Lady Maryam was in? No, he wasn't worshiping the place, but rather he recognized that that place is a cause. This is a place where there have been blessings. And as there have been blessings in that place in the past, there may be blessings in that place in the future. And so standing there to make the dua might be a cause for the dua to be answered. And in fact, his dua was answered. Okay, we're going to talk more about this. Trust me, we're now getting towards the back of the book, and there's going to be more talk about the issue of tawassul and the issue of tabarruk as we move on in the book. But for now, it's enough for us to understand this story about Lady Rahma. This is a historical event that's true. It's something that Allah created in real life in our history so that we can all look at it and know that Islam is true, and know that it's not the causes that create the effects, but rather Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the creator of everything. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. If anyone has questions, go ahead and drop them in the box. I'll start scanning. Doesn't look like there were many comments today, mashallah. Do you have a question?
How many comments were there?
I don't know. I didn't count them. All right. Well, in that case, let's say La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. La ilaha illallah. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallim. رب اغفر لي وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات رب اغفر لي وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات رب اغفر لي وللمؤمنين والمؤمنات. بارك الله فيكم. I'll see you next week, inshallah ta'ala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.